27 luxury cars were parked outside the Oasis Club, but none of them belonged to the woman crying in the rain. The billionaire pointed a finger and barked, "Throw this trash out before she stains the marble." He laughed, a sound as cold as a bank vault closing. "But damn, before continuing, please indicate in the comments which city you are assisting from." The Oasis Club in Manhattan was not just a restaurant, it was a sanctuary for the 0.1%. At the center of the VIP lounge sat Faris Al-Ghamdi. At 34, Faris was the steel sultan of the Middle East, a man whose family's construction firms had built the very skyline of Dubai. He was dressed in a $12,000 bespoke suit, and his time was calculated in thousands of dollars per second. Nia, a quiet woman who had moved from Georgia to New York to put her younger brother through medical school, had been working double shifts for 8 months. She was tired, her feet ached, but her spirit was unbroken. As she leaned over to clear Faris's table, her hand trembled, just a fraction. A single drop of vintage red wine spilled onto the white silk tablecloth, barely the size of a coin. Faris stopped talking to the oil minister. He looked at the spot, then looked at Nia as if she were a cockroach in his salad. "You have any idea what this table costs?" Faris's voice was a low, dangerous rumble. "This silk was imported from Lyon. Your entire life's earnings couldn't pay for the dry cleaning." "I am so sorry, Mr. Al-Ghamdi," Nia said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Let me get a stabilizer and—" "I don't want a stabilizer. I want you gone," Faris interrupted, snapping his fingers for the manager. "Get this woman out of my sight. Not just from the table. Out of the club. Now." The manager, terrified of losing Faris's billion-dollar patronage, grabbed Nia's arm. "You heard the man, Nia. Hand over your apron. You're done." Nia felt the sting of humiliation as the wealthy guests turned to watch. Faris smirked, turning back to his guests. "Some people are born to build empires," he said loudly. "Others are born to ruin them with a drop of wine." Nia was shoved through the heavy oak doors and into the freezing New York rain. She stood on the sidewalk, her uniform soaked, her dignity bruised. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a cracked smartphone. She didn't call a lawyer. She didn't call the police. She dialed a number that was saved under a single letter, M. The phone picked up on the first ring. A deep, gravelly voice answered in Arabic, a dialect so old and pure it would have made Faris's blood run cold. "Nia, why are you calling this line? Is everything all right?" "Uncle," Nia said, her voice trembling but cold. "The Al-Ghamdi family is building the new Skygate project in Dubai, aren't they?" "Yes," the voice replied. "We are the primary lenders for the $9 billion credit line." "Why?" "Cancel it," Nia said, watching Faris through the club's glass window. "Cancel it all. Faris Al-Ghamdi just told me my life's earnings are worthless. Show him what happens when his bank account becomes the same." There was a 3-second silence on the other end. "Consider it done, princess. You are the daughter of the lion. No one insults our blood and keeps their gold." Inside the club, Faris was laughing at a joke. Suddenly, his phone, and the phones of every advisor at the table, began to scream with emergency notifications. Inside the Oasis Club, the atmosphere shifted from celebration to chaos in less than 60 seconds. The steel sultan Faris Al-Ghamdi, who had just been mocking Nia's life, was now staring at his phone with a face as white as the silk tablecloth he had been so worried about. "Sir," his chief financial advisor gasped, his hands shaking as he swiped through a barrage of red alerts. "The Al Maktoum Global Bank has just frozen our $9 billion credit line. They cite ethical violations and reputational risk. Our stocks are plummeting in the pre-market trade." Faris felt a cold sweat soak through his $12,000 suit. "That's impossible. We were supposed to break ground on the Skygate project in 12 hours. If that money doesn't move, the contractors will seize our assets." Suddenly, the manager of the club ran back into the VIP lounge, his face frantic. "Mr. Al-Ghamdi, there's There's a fleet of black SUVs outside. They've blocked the entire street. And the chairman of the Al Maktoum group is on the phone for the Waitress. Faris's heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. He looked toward the glass doors. Outside, in the pouring rain, Nia was no longer standing alone. 4 men in dark suits, looking like special forces, were holding umbrellas over her. One of them handed her a long, cashmere coat that probably cost more than Faris's car. Nia walked back into the club. The silence that followed her was absolute. The guests who had laughed at her now lowered their heads. She walked straight to Faris's table. She didn't look angry, she looked disappointed, which was far more terrifying. "The wine stain is still there, Faris," she said, her voice calm and melodic. "But I think your bigger problem is the blood in your company's veins. It's thin. It's weak. And now, it's dry." Faris stood up, his legs feeling like jelly. Who are you? I checked your file. You're Nia Johnson from Georgia. You're a nobody." "I am Nia Johnson," she replied, her eyes flashing with a hidden fire. "But my mother was the sister of Malek Al-Sabah. I moved to Georgia to live a life away from the gold and the guards. I wanted to see if I could build something on my own. I wanted to see if the world was as cruel as my uncle said it was." She leaned over the table, her shadow falling over the steel sultan. "I spent 8 months serving you. I saw how you treat the people you think are beneath you. You didn't just insult me tonight, Faris. You insulted every person who ever worked a double shift to feed their family. And in my family, we don't build empires for people who don't respect the hands that lay the bricks." Faris's phone rang. It was his father, the patriarch of the Al-Ghamdi family. Faris answered, his voice trembling. "Father." The scream from the other end was so loud the whole table heard it. "You fool. What did you do in New York? The Al-Sabah family has pulled every contract. We are ruined. Unless you get on your knees and fix this, don't bother coming home." Faris looked at Nia. The woman he had ordered thrown out like trash was now the only person who could save his family from the gutter. "Please," Faris whispered, his arrogance vanishing. "I didn't know. I'll do anything. I'll make you the manager. I'll give you $1 million. Nia let out a soft, cold laugh. "You still think everything has a price tag, Faris. That's why you're a billionaire, but you'll never be a leader." She turned to the manager of the club, who was trembling in the corner. "The Skygate project needs a new developer," Nia said. "Call the foundation. Tell them we're looking for a firm that treats its janitors with the same respect as its CEOs." "Nia, please." Faris cried out, reaching for her hand. The security guards stepped in front of him, their presence like a stone wall. Nia didn't look back. She walked out of the Oasis Club, leaving the wine stain and the broken billionaire behind. The rain in Manhattan hadn't stopped, but the atmosphere outside the Oasis Club had shifted from a cold drizzle to a high-stakes standoff. 6 black-armored Mercedes Maybachs idling on the curb created a wall of steel. At the center stood a man who looked like he had stepped out of a history book, Malek Al-Sabah. His presence was so commanding that the NYPD officers nearby didn't even ask for his ID, they simply stayed back. Malek was the shadow banker of the East, the man who provided the liquidity for entire nations. Nia stepped into the light of the Maybach's headlamps. Her cashmere coat was soaked, but she stood tall. Malek stepped forward, his eyes softening only for her. "You look like your mother when she was stubborn," Malek said in his deep, resonant voice. She also thought she could hide in the real world and pretend the crown didn't exist. "Now, look at you. Standing in the dirt, fighting with a man who isn't fit to shine your shoes." "I wasn't fighting him, Uncle," Nia replied, her voice firm. "I was judging him. And he failed." "He did more than fail," Malek growled. He turned his gaze toward the club doors, where Faris Al-Ghamdi had just stumbled out, looking like a ghost. Faris saw Malek and almost fell to his knees. "Lord Al-Sabah." Faris gasped, his voice cracking. Please. It was a mistake. A misunderstanding. I will compensate the lady. I will. Malek didn't even let him finish. He raised a single finger, and his security team moved forward, creating a barrier that made Faris look like a peasant begging at the gate. You don't compensate a princess of the Saberline with money, Faris, Malek said, his voice dropping to a terrifying whisper. You compensate with your legacy. By dawn, the Al-Ghamdi name will be removed from every skyscraper in the Gulf. You wanted Nia out of your sight? I am making you invisible to the entire financial world. Malek turned back to Nia. Enough of this circus. The jet is fueled at Teterboro. Your brother is waiting for you in Dubai. He's finished his exams, and it's time you both stopped playing this game of normalcy. The family needs you. Nia looked at the cracked smartphone in her hand, then at the Oasis Club, the place where she had scrubbed floors and taken insults just to prove she could survive on her own. She realized that while she had proven her strength, she had also realized that power, when held by the wrong people like Faris, was a disease. I'll go with you, uncle, Nia said. But not to sit on a throne. Malek narrowed his eyes. Then why? The Skygate project, Nia said, looking at the stunned Faris one last time. It's a $9 billion project. I want to head it. I want to build those towers, but I want to build them my way. No more exploited labor. No more disposable workers. If the Al-Sabah name is going to be on the skyline, it's going to represent the people who actually built it. Malek studied his niece for a long moment. A slow, prideful smile spread across his face. You want to be a builder of worlds, not just a dweller in them. Very well. The Skygate is yours. But first. Malek reached into his pocket and pulled out a velvet box. Inside was a signet ring, a falcon carved from a single piece of emerald. Wear this, Malek commanded. So the next time a man looks at you, he doesn't see a nobody from Georgia. He sees the woman who holds his future in her hands. Nia took the ring. She didn't put it on her finger immediately. She tucked it into her pocket, next to her cracked phone. I don't need the ring for them to see me, uncle, Nia said, stepping into the car. They'll see me when the towers rise. As the Maybach pulled away, Faris Al-Ghamdi stood alone in the rain, watching the red taillights of his vanished empire disappear into the New York traffic. He had ordered a waitress thrown out, and in doing so, he had thrown away everything he ever owned. The flight to Dubai was 10 hours of silence and strategy. Nia sat in the leather-bound cabin of the Al-Sabah private jet, watching the clouds move like ghosts beneath her. She was no longer wearing the waitress uniform. She was draped in a silk abaya of midnight blue, the emerald signet ring finally resting on her finger. But as the skyline of Dubai emerged from the desert haze, a forest of glass and steel reaching for the heavens, Nia felt a familiar tightening in her chest. You look troubled, Malek said, not looking up from his briefing tablet. The Al-Ghamdi family didn't become billionaires by being honest, uncle, Nia replied. Faris is a coward, but his father, Zubair Al-Ghamdi, is a wolf. He won't let a $9 billion project slip away without drawing blood. Let him growl, Malek dismissed. He has no leverage. But Malek was wrong. The moment the jet touched down at the private terminal, Nia's phone buzzed. It wasn't her uncle's high-security line. It was a message to her old, cracked Georgia phone. It was an image, a grainy, black-and-white photograph from 10 years ago. It showed a younger Nia in a lab coat, standing next to a man whose face had been blurred out, surrounded by blueprints that bore the top-secret seal of a rival military contractor. The text beneath it read, "The world thinks their Oasis waitress is a saint. Wait until they see how the princess sold out her own country's tech. See me at the Skygate site at midnight. Zubair." Nia felt the blood drain from her face. That photo was from her time as a brilliant engineering student at MIT, a period of her life she had buried after a corporate espionage scandal she had been framed for. It was the real reason she had fled to Georgia and changed her name. "Uncle," Nia said, her voice a whisper. "I have to handle something alone." The Skygate construction site was a skeleton of giant cranes and half-poured concrete. At midnight, the desert wind howled through the steel beams. Zubair al-Ghamdi stood by the edge of the foundation pit, a man in his 60s with eyes as cold as a shark's. "You have your mother's eyes," Zubair said as Nia approached. "But you have a traitor's heart. Did you think a name change and a waitress job could erase what you did in Boston?" "I was framed, Zubair. And you know it," Nia said, stepping into the light. "Your company was the one that bought those stolen blueprints." "The world doesn't care about framed, Nia. They care about headlines," Zubair sneered, holding up a flash drive. "I have the full trail. If I leak this, your ethical building project dies before the first brick is laid. The Al-Sabon name will be dragged through the mud." He stepped closer, his voice a venomous hiss. "Give me back the Skygate contract. Reinstate Faris. Or I destroy you." Nia looked at the flash drive, then at the massive pit that was supposed to be her legacy. She realized that the quiet waitress had one more trick up her sleeve, one that she had learned back in those very labs in Boston. "You're right, Zubair," Nia said, pulling out her cracked phone. "Headlines are everything. That's why I've been recording this entire conversation on a direct link to the Dubai International Financial Center's ethics board." Zubair froze. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Nia held up her phone. On the screen, a waveform moved in real time. "And while we're talking about Boston, did you know that the blueprints you bought back then had a logic bomb embedded in them? I designed them. I knew someone would steal them. The moment you tried to use that tech in your other buildings, it started a countdown." Nia took a step forward, her emerald ring glowing in the moonlight. "Your family isn't just broke, Zubair. You're dangerous. Every building your firm has touched in the last decade is now flagged for structural audit because of that stolen tech." Zubair's phone rang. It was his lead architect. The man's voice was screaming so loud it could be heard in the wind. "Sir, the servers. Everything is being wiped. The government is at the door." Nia watched as the Wolf of Dubai crumbled. He realized he hadn't walked into a meeting with a waitress. He had walked into a trap set 10 years ago by the most brilliant mind he had ever tried to ruin. "You can keep the flash drive," Nia said, walking past him toward her waiting car. "I have a tower to build. And this time, I'm building it on the truth." The desert sun began to bleed over the horizon, turning the Persian Gulf into a sheet of liquid gold. At the Skygate construction site, the silence of the night was replaced by the thunderous roar of machinery. But this wasn't the sound of a typical Dubai project. There were no shouts of fear, no guards with batons. Instead, there was a calculated, rhythmic precision. Nia stood on the observation deck, 40 stories above the ground. She had traded the blue abaya for a white hard hat and a high-visibility vest over her silk suit. Beside her stood Malik Al-Sabah, watching as the first massive steel girder, the heart beam, was lowered into place. "You did more than just clear your name, Nia," Malik said, his voice thick with uncharacteristic emotion. "You dismantled a dynasty that had been a cancer on this city for 30 years. "Zubair and Faris were just symptoms, Uncle," Nia replied, her eyes fixed on the workers below. "The real disease was the idea that people are disposable. Look down there." She pointed to the digital screens at the base of the site. They didn't show stock prices or Zubair's face. They showed the names and faces of the lead engineers, the welders, and the crane operators. Below their names were their health stats and their ownership stake, a revolutionary model Nia had implemented where every worker earned a piece of the building's future revenue. "The Skygate isn't just a tower," Nia continued. "It's a living proof that you can build the tallest structure in the world without stepping on a single soul to do it." Suddenly, a small figure appeared on the deck. It was a young boy, barely 10 years old, clutching a tablet. It was Nia's younger brother, Leo, the reason she had scrubbed floors in Manhattan for 8 months. "Nia!" Leo shouted, running to her. "The medical school in Georgia. They just called. They received the anonymous endowment for the new research wing. They're naming it after Mom. Nia knelt down and hugged him, a single tear escaping her eye. The money she had inherited from the Alsabo Trust hadn't gone to cars or diamonds. She had funneled every cent into the places that had helped her when she was nobody. "We're going home for the dedication, Leo," she whispered. "But this time, we're going in our own plane." 1 year later, the Skygate was completed. It wasn't the tallest building in the world, but it was voted the most beautiful. Its glass skin captured the condensation from the humid air, turning it into a vertical forest that provided free water to the surrounding district. In the lobby, where thousands of people passed every day, there was a small, bronze plaque near the entrance. It didn't list the Alsabo name or the board of directors. It simply had a quote, written in both English and Arabic. "To the ones who are invisible, we see you. We are standing on the strength of your hands." Nia rarely visited the executive office. Most days, you could find her in the staff canteen, sitting with the maintenance crew, listening to their stories. She still wore the emerald signet ring, but she never used it to demand respect. She had learned that a crown is heaviest when you wear it alone, but it becomes light as air when you use it to lift others. As for Faris and Zubair al-Ghamdi, they were never heard from again in the world of high finance. Rumor had it they were seen working as junior clerks in a shipping port, the very kind of job they used to look down upon. Fate had a funny way of making sure everyone eventually learned what it felt like to be the one pouring the coffee. The world is a wheel that never stops turning. Today's billionaire can be tomorrow's beggar, and the waitress you ignore today might be the one who decides your future tomorrow. True power isn't found in the ability to throw someone out. It's found in the wisdom to know that every human being carries a universe of secrets. Nia didn't change because she found her wealth. She changed the world because she never forgot what it felt like to be without it. Always be careful who you look down upon. You might just be looking at the person who is about to rebuild your world.